don't have anywhere and we wouldn't
Store
want to
'em.
have anywhere to store them. And so that's one of the other issues that we'll talk about here in a little bit.
Yeah, one more follow-up on
Go
that.
ahead.
So what is going to incentivize me? Because let's say VNA has the permit and I come rolling up near her with my cart, right? And I don't have my permit. What's going to incentivize me to get a permit?
Well, the hope would be the administrative fine that you're going to receive. Although, again, as Mr. Barnes has pointed out, we're working within SB 946 that really compacted and put a very narrow lane on enforcement. And so even though we can, and I didn't point this out, and I'm sorry, I didn't point it out earlier, even though we can issue a $200, $500, $1,000 administrative fine, the state law says if they can't pay it, we have to reduce it, and we have to be able, there is a payability clause within that. And so I'll be honest, there's not a whole lot of motivation to get a permit.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's
And-
not really helping then.
But
Because it's,
we're-
right now, there's businesses being hurt by some of these businesses, right?
absolutely.
So it's not really solving that part of the problem. That's just one part of it, but.
Yeah, we're addressing that part that we can address under state law. And one of the things I was going to mention later, the permit is not cheap. There's a lot of different permits you have to get before you get this permit. In fact, I think I passed over it without saying it's for a primary vendor, it's between $327 and $1,081 for a year's permit. Some of them are just weekend permit or one-day permits. For an employed vendor, it's $260 for the year. These permits are very much like this. We want to the ordinance dictates that we take a picture, so these permits aren't copied and handed out across or sold fraudulently, and so they will have to have that permit on them. I mentioned voluntary compliance. We're all about that, but we've talked to a lot of other jurisdictions that have been doing this longer than we. Well, we haven't yet, so longer than we have. We're fortunate to have somebody on our staff that worked with the city of Santa Monica for quite some time and headed up their vendor enforcement program. There's no cost recovery in this. There's, as I said, a very low threshold of incentive and enforcement, and it's not cheap to go out and do this. If one of the things that we're going to talk about here in a minute is staffing and what it's going to look like to do that. But we're a big county, and the more that the cities put enforcement measures in place and ordinances in place, the more these folks are going to find someplace else to go that's not as readily available to address it. And so the county, if we don't meet the city's efforts in that, the water kind of seeks its own level. It's going to go where the enforcement of any kind isn't. And so if we were to go out, I've been out with Charles and went out with the city of Ventura to watch their operation, and taking one of these big roadside, pop-up food restaurants is about a 4-hour process. By the time you get together, get your gear, get out, identify everybody, let everything cool down, put it in trucks and trailers, take it to the abandoned or to the impound yard, unload it, do your paperwork. So if we're working an 8-hour shift, we can get to 2 of those. If we have to drive to Simi Valley or somewhere else that's not quite so local, that's going to incur more staff time to get there. And so what we propose to do is to, at the board's direction, when you give a suggestion, if you want us to come back with amendments or do something else, we'll do that. And once we start, we would go out because I couldn't tell you right now how many there are. I can't say there's this many outside of Simi Valley, there's this many outside of Oxnard. I know in my personal experience driving around the county, I'm seeing more and more. And I'm seeing more and more of everything, not just the food vendors, but also the textile vendors with blankets and pillows and rugs and what have you. And so, if we're going to consistently be out there and addressing this, not only for the primary goal of health and public safety, but also equity with businesses who are playing by the rules, it's going to take a lot of staff to do that. And so we want to go out, educate, hope, pray for voluntary compliance, and see what kind of response we get with permits and permit applications, but also then come back to you and say, okay, we've been out here for a month or two, or now these are the locations we have found them. This is the estimate of time that we feel it's going to take for us to address these. And I know this as well, if we don't continue to address them, this is not like a special project, we're going to do it for 90 days and they're going to go away. If we stop, they'll come back. We've seen that in jurisdiction after jurisdiction that thought they had it under control, and once they kind of scaled back, these vendors popped right back up. Next.
No, next. If I could just come in and make a point.
Please.
In response to your question, Supervisor Parham, Charles Genkel, Environmental Health Director. The facilities, what really started this effort, what you're seeing out there in the public are public food stands. And to address the impoundment issue, they're actually not permittable. There's no way to permit such an operation. Inherently, there is a risk to public health and safety. So the power to impound is there it's baked into this ordinance for that reason, so that Doug's group can go ahead and impound equipment when there is a public health and safety element. As a director of environmental health, when someone does not have a health permit and they're doing full food preparation at one of these pop-up stands, that's a public health risk, and we would have that power to impound. Back to what Doug had mentioned about just the effort involved with impounding. It's we're not going to have one staff person out there impounding a whole stand. It's an effort. It needs to be a coordinated effort with law enforcement. But I just wanted to make that point that getting a permit for a lot of the vendors that are out there, it's just not feasible for those larger pop-up stands. Sorry.
I think actually you're next here. So one of the things, this would have to be a coordinated effort with law enforcement. Some of these stands in the past in other jurisdictions have turned somewhat ugly, if you will, and potentially violent. And so we would want help from them. And then we would either have to have our own equipment or be assisted by Public Works with a truck and a trailer and then an impound yard, someplace to store these, then staff to release them if they come in, and then staff to dispose of them if they don't come in. And so it's a pretty big program, if you will, if we're going to do it in that fashion. And then Charles, you had something about fees, I believe was the next one. You want to address that?
Good afternoon. Again, Charles Genkel, Environmental Health Division Director, Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Savette Johnson. When we were here in December 5th, it was requested that we evaluate potential fee waivers for food vendors that we regulate, and they would be identified as what we call mobile food facilities. This chart here really demonstrates those are our fees. We have different types of food vendors that are out there, and they range from either a food cart that sells just prepackaged ice cream all the way to a full-blown catering truck, which would be a mobile food facility type 4. The attachment 4 in the board letter actually has a summary of and description of all those vending activities. We evaluated these activities. We really haven't found a clear, equitable way to determine who would be eligible for a fee waiver. We do recognize that there are vendors out there that are paying for their health permit fee. They also pay the city fees for food vending. A lot of vendors are operating, within a city area like the city of Oxnard. We receive a lot of complaints from vendors who are actually from the city of Oxnard operating. Would we be able to go out there and waive fees for, let's say, vendors that are operating out of the city of Simi Valley, other unincorporated areas, the city of Ojai? For us, we had no clear determination as to who we would give these fee waivers to, or if there was a distinguishable way to determine that. In addition, we have received complaints from brick and mortar businesses, so we look at those businesses and the impacts to those businesses. So do we consider fee waivers for them as well? So it is a challenging effort, but But again, we're here to seek board direction on that effort as well. Any questions on that?
Any questions? No? Go ahead, Supervisor
If it
Parvin.
can't be equitable,
Excuse me?
you just talking about whether it's equitable or not. If you can't prove that it's equitable, then how can you not charge the fee? Well, the permit, you said they would be refunded their permit fee.
So for our health permit fees, if you get a permit from us, from the Environmental Health Division as a mobile food facility, you can operate countywide, so you can go anywhere. There may be certain areas that are more impacted than others. So for example, you may have Oxnard vendors where there's a larger volume of pop-up food stands and unpermitted vending activities. That's been the argument for, hey, we've been impacted by these unlawful activities, so therefore we want to have our fees waived as a result of that. These fees do pay for our program. These fees are also designed for all food vending activities. So if you're a catering truck operating in another city, you may not be as impacted. Did I answer your question? I
Yeah,
want to make sure
that makes
I got
sense.
that right.
No, it makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
And I would point out too that when we talk about impounding goods and equipment because of inherent safety issues, the slide of where you can't do it and all of those locations, 10 feet from this, 150 feet from that, without, all of those come from the understanding that if you're in that area, it creates a site safety issue for somebody pulling in or out of a driveway, or somebody with an accessibility device not able to access a ramp. And so that's where the "thou shalt not" here kind of comes from, the idea of safety. There's one more slide? There's more. Oh, there is one more slide. One more slide. Next. Questions?
Okay, I do have a question for you, and that's with our public safety. So public safety sees a vendor in a location, unincorporated area. What would they do? Would they call code compliance and say, hey, we have someone here? What are the process, just so that we're aware of it?
Well, it would depend on staffing levels and any type of budgetary enhancement to address this issue right now. Staffing is full with their Monday through Friday, complaint-driven, receivership, subtendered housing, illegal businesses, et cetera. So if the board directs and decides that they want additional enforcement on this, there would need to be some way that they could be staffed, and there could be a response to that. Or if the staff decided, or excuse me, the board decided they wanted to staff it proactively and have code compliance staff go out proactively and find these and address them, or have an understanding of on Saturdays there's a lot of them here. We'll go out and we'll do that. It just depends. Right now, if somebody was out there at night and said this is a safety issue, there's no way for us to respond.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I think that's something for us to contemplate, understand, depending on budgets and so forth, but also understanding those vendors that do have permits, and how do we support them? The state is making it very difficult for us, because how do you actually say, how do you confirm that they can or cannot pay?
Well, we'll have to cross that bridge when we come to it. There is no guidelines within the state law.
Right.
I do know that when in other code enforcement methods that we use and tools we use, such as civil administrative penalties, I can reduce based on hardship. And when that happens, if you claim a hardship, I can request information from you, such as bank statements, tax statements, and things like that. I'll be honest with you, though, I don't know if the staff time, none of the staff time here can be charged on any of this that I'm aware of. The staff time may be more a budget hit than actually reducing a fine and encouraging them to get the permit. And perhaps, I don't know, we didn't talk about this, but maybe the fine can go towards a permit. I don't know.
Well, and I really appreciate the work that has been done, and to really understand, based on state law, what can we do and what can we do to help our businesses. I understand that maybe someone's doing this because they need a step up, but we also need to do the processes correctly. for the safety of our community, because they don't know. There's a storefront that pops up, they have no clue if they have a permit or not, because they haven't had experience in it. So it just is a heavy weight, just to understand, and how do we support, if this is approved today, what do we support, how do we support it? So, thank you.
You're welcome. And I will say that we've been contacted, just since we've started this process, we've been contacted by other counties saying, hey, let us know how it goes and what you're doing, because we don't know what to do either. And we've contacted, Mr. Barnes wrote the ordinance out of other ordinances that are out there. So we're not the end of the spear, and we're not the tip of the spear. We're kind of in the middle here, trying to figure out best practices. We've looked at some of that. And unfortunately, with the way, in my experience, the way the state law is written, there's not a whole lot of best practices to be able to leverage and motivate to gain voluntary compliance.
Okay. I do know we have one public comment. Maybe we could go there, and then we can ask more questions after.
Thank you, Chair Long.
Thank you.
We do have one speaker signed up for this item. And then we also have a Spanish interpretation available if anybody else wants to give public comment who hasn't signed up. So our speaker that we have signed up currently is Maria Alvaron. Maria, you have 3 minutes to give your comment.
Okay. Good afternoon, distinguished members. We are here to represent Ventura County food trucks. We are currently facing financial challenges that risk the proliferation of sidewalk street vendors. Today, we propose the reconsideration of the necessary for food trucks to maintain a commissary. Our food trucks are equipped with essential facilities such as warm water, a triple compartment sink, water waste tanks, refrigeration, and steam tables to ensure compliance with food safety regulations, in which any and all food vendors should follow, as we have. We prepare our ingredients and cook our food in all food trucks. We already take proper precaution for everything. Why is it that the commissary burdens us with extra expenses for dirty water disposal? To illustrate, Alcatraz Commissary, for instance, escalated its rental fees from $1,100 in January 2024 to $1,500 in February 2024, making a substantial 40% increase. Ventura County Commissary increased their rent prices as well and notified food trucks members of rent increase by placing a sign on the wall informing of rental increase. Starting February 1st, 2024, rent rate in Ventura County Commissary went from $1,100 to $1,300. That's a 20% constitution raise, in which new contractors are now demanding $1,500 for rent. We appeal for assistance in resolving the issue and propose exploring alternative to mandatory additional. We only ask to be treated the same, fair competition. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you. And supervisors, any other questions, comments? Yes, Supervisor Lopez.
Thank you, Chair, and I appreciate the effort from code compliance and environmental health, really working to address this issue. I think we've all heard it, we've all seen it. It's not a foreign issue, and I think going back to some of the comments that you all shared and the questions from my colleagues, as far as, what is the incentive for someone to come into compliance, right? And I think it goes back to having a consistent presence through, whether it's code compliance, whether it's environmental health inspectors, whether it's public safety, coming to address that, right? So I do want to move forward with doing something. It's definitely been a question that has been raised consistently by the public, the need to do something about it. And I think this is a first step and good step forward in establishing an ordinance, and then following with that educational phase, right? And that's something that everyone will be receiving the information. So once, what I'm really looking to is that report back in July on, the approximate number of how many vendors are out there. And if it's possible to even coordinate with our cities to have the full understanding of the impact countywide, not just in unincorporated. I mean, that might be a little more pressure for the cities to move forward in adopting an ordinance and maybe following and replicating the county's efforts in how to get to a place where maybe there's less presence there's more permits that are issued. So I just want to appreciate the work that you're all doing, and hopeful that when that report comes back, that we will have more information to really inform us on how we can move forward and what the cost is going to what it's going to be. I had, I believe, a staff member from Supervisor Lavier's office, as well as my office, was in attendance with the team visiting Santa Monica. And so it was very insightful to hear back on how Santa Monica is handling a lot of reduced.
But folks that are actually doing it legally, the only incentive that I really can think of is the fact that I've got a permit and I'm signed off by the health department, I'm legal, and I'm doing this according to the law. Support our local businesses, support the ones that are doing it with the ones.
Know if we have enough staff to be even effective at this, at the county level, maybe at the city levels, although they're probably in the same shape we're in. I don't think they have a whole lot of staff either, extra staff. So I look at it as sort of another unfunded mandate. I mean, it's a mandate, it's not really funded. So even though I'm comfortable in moving it forward, I'm not comfortable with its implementation. Not on our, I mean, just that it won't be successful, in my opinion, but I'm hopeful.
As am I.
Thank you, Supervisor Lavier.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for all of the work, you too, Mr. Barnes, for getting this together. I know it was a heavy lift. Moving forward, I just really think we need to focus on how we can strengthen the ordinance to more incentivize people to come into permitting. It's not fair to the people that are trying to play by the rules and taking all of those additional costs and burdens. And I agree with your process in terms of the education and the outreach first, giving people a chance to do the right thing. But moving forward, and I don't know, I don't want to delay this. I want to get this on the books and I want to start moving forward. But as we start looking, when you come back in June or July, and I do think that we should strengthen this somehow to make it a little more punitive for those who aren't in compliance, and that probably means impoundment. I think that's the tool we're going to have to use ultimately to get people into compliance. If you take their stuff enough, they're either going to leave or they're going to come into compliance. And I think that's what we should be focusing on moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. And for me, how do we bring, bear to honey? How do, because I want, the honey is the goodness of, the cart running appropriate and no health risks and so forth, and running like a business. We have our food trucks here who are running like a business, and they have their health, and they're held accountable, and I want to support them. And it's very, how do we separate the two of the carts versus the hand carts? The trucks versus the hand carts. Well, then if you're not going to really do anything, maybe I just transfer it there. I make it at home and then just drive it over with my car and do it. How do we, that's the bigger picture that I'm really concerned about. Because our food trucks, we know they're refrigerated. We know that there's running water to wash their hands and so forth, so people won't get sick. And I don't want to buy a permit, so I'm just going to make it at home and drive it in my car and then put a table out there. That's the risk of getting sick if they've been out there for 5 hours on a 90-degree day. That's where I get really concerned. So, I appreciate what's going on here. I think that's just the next step is how do we make sure that all. I appreciate